city is to be a safe place, a beacon on a hill, a fortress, a self-sustaining community. Fort Wayne was like every other idyllic Midwestern town. Friendly people, lots of churches, lots of stores, and lots of jobs. But things went through a seismic shift in 1982 that just about brought Fort Wayne to its knees. It began with the devastating flood of March 16, 1982, when the melting snow and rainfall focused the nation's attention to the convergence of the three rivers and the rising water that removed people from houses and businesses and caused millions of dollars of damage. As the water subsided and businesses were beginning to get back on their feet, the decision was made to close the vast international harvester operation in Fort Wayne, creating a job loss in the thousands. They went from 10,500 employees in 1979 down to 4,600 in July of '82. And another 2,200 were put out of work with the production line closing. The once largest employer in Fort Wayne was pulling out after 60 years.
In the early 1980s, when I was just fresh in the job, I was challenged with the closing of International Harvester. Our rivers rose and we had to save ourselves with sandbags, and that displaced people. So there was lots of need in the community, and basic needs in the community, housing and food. And so everybody, I think, was struggling to figure out a way to meet that need. And I think the way we responded to that is social service organizations, anyway, were to band together and talk with each other and try to figure out how we could make less money go farther. And I think we did a pretty good job of that, particularly in the area of food. I think Community Harvest is a testament to that.
The city was in an emergency, and I remember reading that it was coined, the phrase was coined, Fort Wayne was the city that saved itself. And it really goes to show the community that we have here in Northeast Indiana. And, you know, being a transplant from somewhere else, it's a community I'm so proud to be a part of, and a community I can put down roots in. And just the welcome I got to town, the friends I've made here, it's a wonderful community to belong to.
And this whole effort started one day when the director for Associated Churches, Reverend Mel Phillips, stopped by my office. And we had a conversation, and we began working with Associated Churches, and we put together a system of food banks so that there'd be a geographically oriented boundary. It was happening because all of us were doing it together. The advisory group was people from the city, people from Associated Churches. Lincoln Corporation had sent some people over. I think Magnavox had representatives. And so there were all these really great people that were concerned about hungry people in the community. Community Action started doing some research, and we got in touch with a national organization called Second Harvest. And Second Harvest was in the business of collecting food that was going to waste, being thrown out in the food industry, and instead of throwing it out, distributing it to people that were needy. Anyway, we had lots of conversations with them, and before long, we had the beginnings of Community Harvest Food Bank. We had a semi coming up from Indianapolis, from the food bank down there, Gleaner's Food Bank.
The first building happened to be the old Stafford potato chip plant where my dad worked for many years. We had started reclamation, and food banks started with the reclamation. Old food, still safe. We had occasionally volunteers from the Urban League and some other organizations in town that volunteer and work back there. A lot of them were training to do things. And then in those days, we had a lot of trainings around the country to other food banks, experienced food banks. We were probably one of the early food banks. As things progressed, we grew, and with I worked with two different executive directors, and I call it the missionary days and the look out world, here I come days. Janet Satterfield was really quiet, laid back, and she just kept things just low key. Worked with donors, worked with a lot of organizations. The Junior League was an early organization that helped us quite a bit, and doctors' wives, doctors' organizations, food soliciting or food company executives. And that's how the donations started picking up locally. We had local food drives, very little money to spend anything, and we had I think it was a 12 cubic foot refrigerator then. That was our refrigeration in the old building on Lafayette. And then 93 to 94, we decided to build this building.
So Harvest Bank was in existence at that time at Harrison Street, Lafayette Street. And that's where I started there, picking up food. And I started liking it so well, and so I started volunteering for the Community Harvest Food Bank. It worked out really well. When I got in there the first time, I just couldn't believe it. One thing, it was so crowded you couldn't move around, but besides that, they did a wonderful job under the circumstances. And there was little trouble places to park there was another problem. I'm trying to think, the guy was Bill Hoover. He was my boss out there. Then it started getting more people, and they was getting a lot more food in, so they had to make a big adjustment. So what they did, they come out here and built this structure. And they just couldn't believe the difference. Then when they opened up here, I just come out here and volunteered for about 3 or 4 years, something like that.
So a decision was made to spin Community Harvest off into its own 501c3. So we filed the papers with the state and set up a board of directors. And then that board of directors hired its staff. And the first staff person they hired was their director, a young lady by the name of Janet Satterfield, who carried the organization and made it grow for the first 10 years. And then when she was ready to move on, Jane Avery took the helm and just turned it into the miracle that it is today. Charlie was there pretty much from the beginning when we started looking for community resources to help us, financial resources and just support things. Charlie was right in the doorstep. We're talking about the fellow that used to run Seat Cover Charlie's, if you don't know Charlie Fine. Great gentleman. He was there, we made him, I think he was probably first chair of the advisory board that we formed. Charlie's just well tapped in, I guess because he's such a good guy, everybody liked him. And so he knew people, and some of those people had some money and had some influence in the community, and so he convinced them that this was a really good effort. And so volunteers started showing up, donations would appear.
He did the senior pack, and he had a senior lady who was, she was blind, and he took her food every week and put it and told her exactly where it was in her cabinets. And I remember him talking about her every week. But wherever he was needed, he would be there. The main reason when I go to the food bank is I can feel that my dad would be very proud that I am there. I wasn't volunteering when he was alive, and I feel like that he would be very happy that I was there, and I think about him every time I walk in the door.
Two years after the food bank opened, we celebrated the first 1 million pounds distributed in 1985. Prior to that, I think it was about 400,000 pounds. Fast forward to 2020, we distributed over 18 million pounds of food to the 9 counties of Northeast Indiana. And that was to over 112,000 people that were struggling with food insecurity. At just a single one of our distributions in 2020, we were serving upward of 1,300 families on a Saturday morning distribution. And that's just one of 10 in-house programs we have here at the food bank. After things opened up and people got back to work, those numbers went down back to around 650 families a week or so at that single distribution. And it's amazing and also a terrible thing that we are nearly at our all-time high that we saw when thousands of people were out of work.
But what really got to us was every once in a while there would be a child come through with their parents, and they would see that cereal or whatever, and they would be trying to tear into the box in the pantry because they were so hungry, they wanted food. And so it is moments like that, when you see what's happening to children, or when you have a lady that comes in, she's single, widowed, and she comes up and you hand her something, and she touches the back of your hand and says, you know, with tears in her eyes, if it weren't for you guys doing what you do, I don't know how I would survive.
How often maybe someone falls on tough times and just needs a little bit of help and assistance to get by until they get back on their feet. And so, again, just the amount of lives and individuals that are impacted by the food bank is tremendous. You know, I know we started out, you know, back in 1983, you know, to meet a specific need, and related to, you know, International Harvester shutting down, and you know that has grown from that specific need to, you know, distributing tens of millions of pounds of food annually in Allen County and 8 other counties. And so, again, just the magnitude of the reach of the food bank is pretty impressive and tremendous.
So we are the first food bank in the nation to have a blanch and freeze operation. So Jane Avery, right before she passed away, she didn't get to see the ribbon cutting because she passed away a month before, but that was one of her dreams, to have the blanch and freeze at the North facility. So we're able to take products from farms that we can't give away right away. We're able to take it over to our North facility, blanch and freeze it so we can give it out through the winter.
I love our warehouse. We just had new steel put in over a year ago, and the thing is, we are able to get more product in the building now. And the more product we have, that means there's more people we can serve, and it's all about feeding people. For me, the more people I can feed, that means I'm making a difference in the community on a daily basis.
I would say our demographics, from my perspective, have been shifting to military veterans as more and more of them realize that we have the capability to help them. We have a lot of born outside of the U.S. clients as well, and their children. Some of them have been in the country for a couple months, some for just a couple decades, but there's some language barriers that we get to work with. And then as far as what I kind of get out of helping them and realizing how we can do that is just seeing the look on their face, really, when we have the ability to tell them we can help them when kind of all hope is lost. We can tell them that we can help them, and it's actually remarkably easy for us to help them.
And it's amazing to see how many people are in need in this area. And you wouldn't know it until you come over here and see it. We all make assumptions that if I'm okay, everyone else is okay. And that's far from the truth. There's so much need still in the community. Even with everything that we do with the farm wagons and things like that, we still have a great need, a multitude of people who still need to be fed on a daily basis.
And it's one of those where you talk about the Alice population, you talk about, you know, people truly, nobody wakes up and says, hey, I want to be hungry today. It happens. And I think that was where people started to get it, where we didn't have to explain, you know, this is a human right. Other things are happening. Here we are in our present day. We're talking about inflation. Our new people that we are seeing in our lines are middle class folks. So people say, well, why can't they get a job? Why can't they get more education? These people have the education. They have what it takes to succeed. But due to all the costs, whether it's housing, gas, anything, life happens, and it happens fast, and it happens to each and every one of us at some given point. So please don't be quick to judge, because, you know, it could happen to you.
What sets us apart, I think, is going to be the community that we are a part of and how we identify with that community. It speaks a lot to me, specifically like that aspect of us, because I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I grew up in a household that utilized community harvests when I was a child. So seeing that, you know, we're a collection of people that directly represents the community that we feed every single day, and that sort of understanding and compassion and enthusiasm for the mission is very evident in everything that we do every day. That's what I try to highlight when we're talking about it, because I think it is what makes us different. We get it. I think more than a lot of organizations do. I think everyone that's here is very passionate about what we are trying to do and the difference we're trying to make. And to be surrounded by that every day is really special.
The one thing I've always loved about Community Harvest is anybody that makes a donation, 100% of that donation stays here at Community Harvest. And so when we say we're neighbors helping neighbors, that's exactly what it is. And I talk about our community, and it's not just Community Harvest. It takes every single one of us to meet our mission and truly help people that, you know, just need our assistance.
When I was overseas, when people say hungry, they're real hungry. There's nothing going on. Here, people, even if you work, you still need the help. Let's say when I moved here, I didn't work minimum wage, worked $10 an hour. That's like $400 a week. You take the deduction, leaves you with a lot less. You have to work 2 to 3 weeks to just pay the rent, not the utilities, not insurance, not gas, none of that. So even if you don't work, if you work with the minimum wage, you can't really hardly make it to the end of the month. And a lot of times people would judge, would see big vehicle, nice vehicle, and be like, oh, they are here at the food bank, but we don't know their story. You never know what happened yesterday. A lot of people tend to just try to do whatever they can to get the help they can to pay the bills.
There's been so many changes, not only in the community, but in our organization, both good and bad. But the one thing that has always remained the same is we have been here to meet the need of hunger in the community. We are able to provide those services. New programs have happened. We started a veterans program. We had never had that before, identifying veterans in our community that needed our assistance. Our mobile pantries, you know, they have always been there, but looking and being really cognizant of the pockets of poverty that are in the different communities and really strategizing to make sure that we can get to areas where maybe people can't get to us.
The need's not going away. If we had more trucks in our fleet, and if we were able to provide additional services where we could go out and get this produce and get this fresh food daily and bring it back to our community cupboard, it would be in hungry people's hands today. And we know the retailers are pulling this product every day. And you know what, if they're generous enough to donate it, we ought to be able to go get it.
Looking for drivers, that is one of our biggest areas that we are always looking for good drivers that can help us distribute the food that we we have to give to our community.
Right now we're working out of 2 buildings. Is that the most efficient and effective way to go? So yes, to be able to meet the growth, to be able to get more product into our facilities, we need not only warehouse space, but cooler and freezer, and that's like a hot commodity anywhere. But one thing I think about too is I'm not gonna be here forever, and neither is everybody else. And so we've been really cognizant about getting an endowment started. We're looking at each county also getting an endowment so folks that live in that county can contribute to it, knowing that that's going to live on in perpetuity. So we'll be able to provide all the services, knowing that the new set of leaders coming in, because it will happen at some point, they'll be ready and armed to go with whatever comes up in the future.
I'm Adam Smith. I'm a board president of Community Harvest Food Bank, and I would say to those wanting to learn more about the food bank, I would encourage you and challenge you to come in and learn more about us. See the magnitude of the work being done here, see the amount of lives that are being impacted. Come on a Saturday and see how the food bank reaches over 1,000 people within a few hours. And I'm confident that once you see everything that the food bank's doing and how they are meeting one of the basic foundational needs of life, that you will respond and want to get more involved and perhaps support us financially or support us with your time through volunteering or supporting us through other ways. But the food bank takes a significant amount of financial and other resources to operate and to reach the amount of people that it does. So we sure need your support and would love for you to get involved in any way you can.
Being able to provide meals is something that's just so transformational. And one of the biggest things that is probably disappointing to me is that more people don't get to see the direct impact of their contributions. We get donations from so many loving community members that really care about the people that are served through the programs here and through our partnerships across Northeast Indiana. If they could meet some of the families that their dollars are going to help, if they could just see the way they're changing lives, I think that it would be so much more supported. You're able to see the impact that you're having. So anybody who has considered giving or would consider giving, please visit us and see for yourself how impactful it is to change someone's life.